AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Our host brings you the leading minds in AI, sharing their story, their success, and their advice. Focusing on fast-tracking you to the top, AI in Action cuts through the hype to help you kickstart your data science career. To listen to the latest AI in Action podcast, head over to www.alldus.com/podcast or subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Podcasts.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guest today is Pranav Gandhi. Pranav is the head of business and strategy analytics at Signifyd. Pranav, welcome to the show.
Hey, JP. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. So Pranav, let's start with a background of yourself. Can you give us a brief overview of what your journey in technology has been like, from where you started out to today, your current position leading the business and strategy analytics group for Signifyd?
Yeah, definitely. So career started in MasterCard, actually, on a sort of business development side, so speaking to issuers, and then I actually moved into the retail space, which was Jet.com. I actually worked there for about 3.5 years. The roles that I took actually ranged from starting out in business development, which is a catch-all for pretty much everything, and then moved into kind of strategy and analytics roles. We actually got acquired by Walmart for that $3.3 billion deal. And that sort of led me to work for Walmart.com and essentially help in their pricing and strategy team. And so using a lot of analytics, figuring out the best pricing strategies, different algorithms that we had to use to compete. And then actually took on a role at Moda Operandi, which is a luxury fashion retailer. A similar role, more pricing and strategy analytics. Did that for about a year, and then actually came to Signifyd, where I'm leading the business and strategy analytics team, which is half strategic in nature and the other half kind of business intelligence and making sure that we have the right data for leaders to make their decisions.
Perfect. Thank you for that overview. And let me just jump in here, because I think it's a perfect opportunity to explain to our listeners who Signifyd are as a business, what you guys do, the journey of the company, and then we can go into more recent changes and your role.
So here at Signifyd, we're essentially a commerce protection platform that provides fraud protection, abuse prevention, payment optimization for our customers, which are merchants, so e-commerce merchants. Our merchants range right from your enterprise level merchants to smaller shops. And they all find value in our platform. And I think what makes it really powerful is that we actually are building a network of data. So any transaction that we see, 98% of the time, we've seen some element of that transaction before on our network, which allows us to make decisions essentially for our merchants so as to whether they should accept an order or decline an order based on preventing fraud. And we actually then guarantee those transactions. So if the transaction actually ends up being fraudulent and a chargeback results, we actually cover the merchant for that chargeback because we basically have confidence in our AI models that they will confidently decline fraud and accept the good customers.
So quite an interesting space, and the problem that you're solving is growing exponentially all the time. So there's an increased demand for a service like this. I know you joined, you're there just over 1 year now, I believe. Mm-hmm. But can you give us some insight into the journey of Signifyd and just how successful things have been, particularly over the past few months during the craziness of the pandemic?
It's been really positive. We've seen tremendous growth, as sort of everyone has seen in the space. Yeah, what we've seen is there's been 3 to 5 year shift almost in terms of adoption of e-commerce. We are, I think now, in terms of penetration of e-commerce, close to 20 to 25% of retail sales is now e-commerce. And it was, I think, probably just shy of 10% before the pandemic. So we've really seen this shift towards purchasing online, which in turn has benefited our merchants. And then obviously through what we do has benefited us as well. So yeah, we've seen a tremendous sort of shift. And I think as customers become more comfortable purchasing online due to there's still restrictions in stores, there's still overall kind of people are leaning towards this online channel. And so we've really seen that behavior help us in the last few months.
And Signifyd are supporting major online retailers as well as the smaller, more independent boutique companies, which speaks to the demand for your particular product. Can you give us some insight then into your role leading the business and strategy analytics and then the broader data team? So what happens behind the scenes that allows this product to be so successful?
So we have our decision science team that kind of drive our main models. So I think as any other person within artificial intelligence, machine learning, your models will keep getting better as you have more visibility into data. And as it works really well, as we get more customers, more merchants, we actually see more transactions and we're able to enhance our models and give more accurate decisioning, better decisioning overall. And so that's something that behind the scenes helps. But I think what my role is essentially is to drive our go-to-market engine, make sure that everyone within the company, whether it's the sales teams, the marketing teams, the sort of customer-facing customer success teams, they all have insights, whether it's a current customer of ours or whether it's a prospect, whether they have the data they need to make the best decisions for their roles. And that's where I sit. So it's just access to clean data. We have in-house systems that we use for CRM, making sure that we are tying all those sort of data points across the company to help these business stakeholders make the right decisions. And so that's where my team sits. And it's a pretty great time to be at Signifyd. I think we're, like you mentioned, we're breaking into this sort of space where e-commerce is growing, but at the same time, we're seeing the largest customers in the world and the smaller ones all needing this tool, needing some sort of fraud prevention strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And post-pandemic, I think the shift in e-commerce has really accelerated towards full B2C services, and therefore a service like Signifyd will have a massive impact in supporting these smaller independent firms. Obviously, your background in retail and online retail has really led you to this point, but what was it about the work at Signifyd that drew you to this particular project, moving from amazing companies like Jet and then Walmart, Moda Operandi, to now working on the protection side at Signifyd?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think what led me here was essentially the problem, like we had mentioned earlier, the problem we're solving is actually, it's growing. And we have some interesting stats in-house where the problem of sort of the fraud in the system is actually growing quicker than online retail sales. So that makes our sort of market even larger, so to speak. And so that was something interesting to me. That's more business oriented. But what actually drew me was we're doing something very different. And I think doing it with a technology company where you're trying to solve a very large problem using data is something that really drew me here. As my previous roles, we were doing the same. We were, in our pricing roles, we're using a ton of SKU level pricing data to figure out what's the best price to sell something at. But in our case, we're using data to make decisions. And that decisioning aspect of our business is actually super interesting and unique, and something that I thought is what really drew me. Because if you think about the use cases, we have a ton of use cases, not just in whether you should accept a transaction. We're actually going to move towards other parts of the customer journey where we can make decisions and help merchants make decisions using our data for different parts of it, whether promotion codes are being abused, we can look at that, returns, stuff like that. There's a lot of applicable use cases for our data. That's what makes this space super exciting, I think. And at the same time, it's just very different from an e-commerce business where you're storing inventory, whereas here it's more of a SaaS model.
For sure. For anyone who's interested in working with data, often the people look for is an exciting project, interesting challenges in a growing space, and Signifyd certainly tick all those boxes. I'd want to get your take now on the impact of the pandemic itself and subsequent stimulus checks. You and I spoke about how Signifyd is not just protecting on the security side, but given the access to data that you've got, you're able to to see some interesting trends and potentially make future predictions. So could you speak to what you guys have experienced over the past year and the impact of things like the stimulus check? What have you noticed? What have you found interesting about it?
Definitely. And for those listening as well, we actually released a State of Commerce 2021 study. And that has actually a lot of interesting insights that our team actually works on to help merchants, everyone in the sort of e-commerce system out. So definitely do check that out. Some high level insights though, I think that was super interesting. So we actually, because we are essentially like a network of data, we can actually see when a customer is new to our entire merchant set versus when they're a repeat customer. And so what we actually saw is that new users grew about 32% in 2020 versus 2019. So you're seeing around 32%. This is just new customers coming into the channel that we had never seen before. Now, if you think about why that's so powerful, is that those customers will then at some point start to repeat as well. And that's where I think you're going to see a lot of this growth, is that we're going to see this behavior of people getting used to buying online, whether it's someone of an older demographic that had never shopped online but was forced to during the pandemic. They're going to start repeating. They're going to be like, oh, actually, this is quite efficient, and I was able to get my goods on time, especially if they had a good customer experience. You're going to see them repeat over time. So that was an interesting sort of statistic that we saw. And in terms of the stimulus itself, we saw 40% more new customers shop in the month of March during the stimulus period than the entire month of March. So again, super interesting. The week sort of the stimulus checks were being handed out, you're seeing a lot of customers head towards the online channel, purchase something that potentially that they really needed, more of an essential good. And so that was some really interesting insights we had as well. And we have a in-house blog which kind of details out the different categories. So if you're interested in digging deeper in that, we have a lot of interesting insights there as well.
For sure. So obviously, look, it's been an incredible year for Signifyd. With that, a recent round of funding, so huge backing. With that, there's more growth in store. So could you just speak to that and give us some insight into the year ahead, what you expect for Signifyd, and more importantly, what career opportunities are there going to be for people who are interested in data?
Yeah, absolutely. So super exciting times here. We actually closed our Series E, so 205 million, which put us at a $1.34 billion valuation. So we got a unicorn status, which is all great news. But yeah, that actually, all this kind of growth and the fact that it's great to see that we've had investors that are very confident in our product and in our growth. And so with that will definitely come expansion over time, which will also include a lot of hiring. And there's definitely going to be a lot of room to grow in the market itself. And for that, we'll definitely need the right people. And so there will be definitely a ramp up in hiring. And so I urge, everyone to take a look at the roles we have.
Excellent. So final question from me then. When you look at the round of funding that's come in, the opportunity in this industry and your role at Signifyd, what are you most excited about?
I'm actually most excited about this really expanding into different products. As you mentioned, we have so many more use cases of our data and our model that we can apply to different areas of e-commerce. And so that actually excites me a lot, that we have a very strong team to start out with, that we can, if we apply ourselves, we can really achieve a lot. And I think definitely excited about the growth in the market, which is looking pretty strong. But I think overall, the way we can apply our models in different ways is what's the most exciting. And that actually brings a lot of challenges on the data and analytics side, because we have to actually support, if we're supporting new products, new initiatives, we have to start recording them correctly. We have to make sure we're building our data pipelines in the right ways too. So there'll be a lot of work there, but I think it'll all be well worth it.
Absolutely. We really appreciate you coming on today, Pranav, and talking to us about Signifyd. It sounds like a very interesting space. Anyone who's looking to solve complex problems around security and fraud, you guys are impacting a new emerging field, which is only going to increase as the world shifts towards B2C online e-commerce. and great growth ahead, great career opportunities ahead. So thank you for coming on today and talking to us.
Thanks so much for having me, JP.
AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Alldus offer an exec search program. Alldus can help you discover how data science and AI can transform your company. With our unrivaled network of C-suite executives and senior AI professionals, we offer retained search services across the US and Europe. Get the Alldus advantage. Become a member of the Alldus community and enjoy some of the following: AI meetups. Once a month, our community gathers to listen to some of the leading experts in the world of data science and AI. Our speakers come from all over the world, including Dublin, Boston, and Frankfurt. We also have our AI mentors. Our experts will provide mentoring to Alldus members. And don't forget our AI in Action podcast. Each week we have guests from all over the world talking us through their education, career, and more. Become an Alldus member and get the Alldus advantage. For more information and to sign up for our newsletter, log on to www.alldus.com. That's www.alldus.com. Alldus International, empowering through AI.